Hi guys, in this video I will show you how to use templates with classes. I will use a class named Backpack as an example. The class Backpack has a single member variable of type vector that can store integers, and this member variable is named items. The class also has two public functions. The first function is named getItems, which returns the vector of integers, and the second function is named addItem, which adds an item to the vector. In other words, it adds an item to the backpack. Now I want to introduce a template to replace the integer with a generic type. This will allow me to create different backpack objects, each with a different type of objects that a backpack can hold. Now in front of the class, I need to add template and then open angular brackets. And then I can write either type name with T, or sometimes you also see class instead of type name. You can use both interchangeably. There's not really any difference, but there's one advanced key aspect where it is different. But in most cases, it is the same. I will not go into further details in this video. T is a generic type. It stands for any type you can think of. Now, you can use a different name than T. It's really up to you what you want to name it, but the standard is mostly to use T. So now I replace the int with the T. Now I have a vector that can hold items of the type T, and I can later decide when I create an object what that type will be. Now this class is defined in the .h or .hpp file. I still have to implement these two functions, and I will implement them in the CPP file. I want to show you how this works with templates. So I copy these two functions here, and what you will notice is that T is not defined. Even when I do the standard backpack : and I compile this still gives me an error. You can see the error here. Backpack is not a class namespace or enumeration. The first thing that I have to do is I have to define the template again in front of the return type. So here I define again template with class T. This helps me to define T. Now even with this, if I compile it again, I still get the same error. And that's an error that you might easily run into. So what I have to do is, after the class name here, also define the type. With that, I can remove the error and I can now implement the function. I will simply return the items, and I'm done with this function. Now when I implement a second function, again I have to define the template, and here also I have to define the class name, and on the class name I have to also specify the type, just like this. Then I can implement the function. So here I simply add it to the vector using the push back function. This will add the item at the end of the vector. When I run this and compile this, you can see this now succeeded. When you work with classes and templates yourself, again, be sure that when you implement the functions in a CPP file, that you specify the template in front of the return type for each function implementation. And typically that's done in the line above. The other common pitfall again is to just write the class name but forget the type on the class name. This will result in an error that you see here. Backpack is not a class namespace or enumeration. This is kind of confusing because the class backpack is not the real class itself. It needs to have the template type, and this makes the full class. So always be sure when you see this error, this is because you're missing the template right after the class name. So with the class definition and the function implementations being complete, I will open the main file and I will show you how to create different objects of the class. First, I need to include the backpack file, and then I can create objects of this class. First, I create a backpack of integers. I call this BP1, and then I call add item on it. So I add item 3, add another item 4, and then I create another backpack. This time, let's use a string. I call this BP2, and I need to include string at the top. And then I call BP2. When I call add item, you can now see that this has a string. So the compiler checks that I use the right type here. And I add an apple to it, and I add a banana to it. Now I can use this with any other type. You can see I used a primitive type for the first object, and the second one I use an object type, which is a string. But nothing prevents you to create your own class and then use your own class as the generic type argument. So you can really use it whatever type you have and whatever you want to put into the backpack. You can just specify it as a generic type argument, and then you can add items of that type, in this case to the backpack. So to recap, templates allow you to use generic types in your program. This is especially useful when you have a class with a lot of code and you need that same class for a different type. You do not have to copy and duplicate the entire code. You simply introduce a template, and then you can use the same class with different types, and all your code stays the same. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.